All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here over here. So today we're going to be continuing with data structures. So as we discussed before, a data structure is a means of storing and organizing a collection of data values. These data values can be any of the types of variables we talked about before, such as the strings, booleans, numerics, and so on and so forth. Um, they can also have other data structures nested within them. That means that one data structure can have another data structure being stored inside of it. Each has their own set of methods or a defined action that can be performed on the data structure. As we learned on sets in the previous class, this was the in method that was being called to check whether a object is present within a set. Today we're going to be continuing and learning about more data structures. The first one today is arrays. So an array is an ordered collection of non-unique values that are all of a specific type that are mutable. So we're going to break this sentence down and see what this means, right? So the first thing we talked about is that it's ordered. So what this means is that the order in which we put objects in this data collection matters. So it will also not only store the data within it, but also the order in which it is put. So the order in which you enter them is the order in which they will remain. That's what is written over here. So for example, if we did the same thing with set as we noticed in the previous class, um, it sometimes resulted in them shuffling places and not ending up in the same order as we put them in. So an array will make sure that they remain in the same order. So the next thing we want to talk about here is that they can be non-unique. This means that they can repeat values. So there can be four ones in this or five twos and so on. So you can have multiple of the same values, which was not possible in sets. So are there any questions on um, arrays being ordered or non-unique? All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is specified type. So when we're creating an array, we can only put one type of object within them. So for example, if we put numbers in an array, we can only put numbers in that array. Then if you, for example, the um, if we talk about this array right over here, so if instead of this 9, we tried to put a string over here, it would throw us an error. It would not let us do that. So if we're doing numbers in an array, we have to continue doing numbers. Is that clear? All right. So moving on from that, we also see that they are mutable. So you can alter the values of elements in an array. So for example, we look at how uh, over here, oh, where's my mouse? Oh, okay. So if we look over here in this array, we have created an array called my array. The I here denotes um, the specified type, right? So this means it's an integer. So 3, 2, 1, 5, 7, 6, 8, 0, 9. That's our array. So when we print this out, it will be in the same order as we discussed above, right? So yeah. When we take the so when we index these elements, so we talked about the order, right? So when we're talking about normal day-to-day life, we order them like this, right? First, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. But when we're talking about coding and Python, we actually started from zero instead of one. So this will actually be the zeroth element, and then first, second, and so on. Does that make sense to everyone? That we're starting from zero and not one. So this is very important. This will be followed in the other data structures as well. So this here is how we call the specific element. So when we're saying my array and we put zero in square brackets with it, that means in my array, we want the element at the zeroth place. So that will be 3. So when we print, we change this value to 0, we're making it equal to 0. So this means we're changing this value 3 to 0. So when we print my array again, it gives us 0 instead of that 3 because we're changing that value to 0 over here. Does that make sense to everyone? How we're changing the values in this array. So there's a question, is it mandatory to mention that the values are integers? It is not mandatory to mention it, but it is good practice to mention it. We're going to learn about other types where this might not be needed, but um, for now in arrays, you will be required to write this. Another question we have is why do we want to change the values? So that is a good question. So, for example, we're keeping a list of students, right? So we're keeping a list of students and their ranks in classes, for example, and that's our array. And each number in the array represents, for example, their roll number. So if we want to make changes in that array, we are going to have to use something like this. We won't be able to use a set, right? Does that answer your question? My apologies for joining in late. That is fine. You're okay. Okay, so moving on, let me just clear this. Okay, so not built into Python, so they need to be imported. So from array import star. So we're going to learn more about packages later on in this course, but for right now, you just need to know that in the first line of your code, if you want to use arrays in your code, you need to write this, which is basically importing a package which will allow us to use arrays. So accessing individual elements. Elements of an array can be accessed via their index value. Arrays are zero indexed, meaning that the first element has index value 0, the second has value 1, and so on. I already talked about this, and I hope this is clear to everyone. Oh, it looks like the images have shifted a little up over here. I'm sorry about that. I will fix that before I send these out. You can, um, okay. Okay, I'm not sure what I wrote over there, but I'm sure I already discussed it, and if not, I will put that in my email and put an emphasis on that. So, array methods. So, the first method we have is append. Appends a specified element to the end of the array. So, for example, we have my array. We want to put 11 at the end of that array. We do my array dot append 11, and this will put 11 at the end of the array, right? If we do my array dot pop, this removes the last element from any array. So this will return 11 to us, and it will also remove that from the array. So what happens is this gives us 11, which is the last element, right? So now you see this is a smaller array. Is everyone clear on what append and pop do? These are important methods, and an array is an important data structure. So I want everyone to be clear on what each method is doing. All right, so moving on, we have insert. So we can also insert an element into a specified index. What that does is it pushes the elements on that index and further one to the right, right? So inserts an element into the list at a specified index. So if we insert one at the index one, so that means at the second place, right? If we talk about day-to-day life, so we zero one, right? So it will place a one over there and move everything else to the right. Remove, this removes the first occurrence of a specified element from an array. So if we remove 3, um, it will be removed from that array, right? If we want to do this, instead of using the square brackets, we can also use the method called index, and it will do the exact same thing as the square brackets did earlier. If you want a refresher, I can. So over here, if you see my array square bracket 0, that's how we used to look for the index. And now over here we can also use dot index, which is a method which does the exact same thing. So are we clear on all of the methods of arrays? Okay, looks like everything is clear. Wait, okay. So moving on to dictionaries, this is a new data structure. So this is an unordered collection of key value pairs where values are mutable but keys are not. Okay, so let's try to understand what is happening over here. Okay, so a key is also what I refer to as an index. An index or a key are interchangeable terms in computer science. You will often see people use them equivalently, right? So unordered means that dictionaries don't have a particular order. So they can't be indexed like arrays. So you can't use 0, 1, 2 to index them, right? So to index a dictionary, what we actually do is we have key value pairs. So instead of accessing elements with um, a number or a particular order, they're indexed using a key. For example, the first key is value 1, the second key is value, oh sorry, the first key is key 1, and the value corresponding to it is value 1. The second key is key 2, and the value corresponding to it is value 2, and so on for key 3 and value 3, right? So can be defined using curly brackets or using the dict constructor function. So my dictionary is equal to curly braces or is equal to dict and then open brackets, right? My dictionary is equal to your dictionary. This is true because these are both empty dictionaries. They don't have anything inside. But when you use the is keyword, they're not the exact same. So they're both different dictionaries, but they're equivalent. Does that make sense? Why they're equal, but they're not the same? Okay. So instead of indexing, values in a dictionary can be referenced using their keys. So this is what I was talking about before. So if we do fave color dictionary. This is the name of our dictionary, right? So the first key is David, and the value corresponding to it is blue. So for John, red; Jane, blue; Jill, purple; Paul, green, right? So the keys have to be distinct, but the values can be the same. As we see, blue is being repeated, but none of the keys are being repeated. So for one key, there can only be one value, but for one value, there can be multiple keys. So fave dictionary, color dictionary, and then we use the key David, and this will return to us blue, because blue is the corresponding value for the key David. So this is how we access values in a dictionary instead of using numbers and their order in arrays. So does everyone understand how arrays and dictionaries are different? Also, if you think about it, they're called dictionaries, right? So what do dictionaries really do? You have a list of words, and for each word you will have their meaning, right? So different words can have the same meaning, but the same meaning, like, sorry, different words can have the same meaning, but the same word can also have different meanings in that. But uh, so how we can do this in a dictionary is we can put arrays instead of where we have put, for example, blue. So for the key David, we can have the value as an array, as we talked about in the start, right? Does that make sense? How we can put an array into a dictionary? So the value that corresponds to a key can actually be another data structure. It doesn't need to be a string or a number. Okay, so moving on from this, if you try to access a key that is not in a dictionary, you will get an error. So when you access something from a dictionary, you have to be absolutely 100% certain that it is indeed in a dictionary, otherwise you will encounter an error. Dictionaries can be nested such that the value of some key in your dictionary is itself a dictionary. So this is what I was talking about. But so you can have the value corresponding to a key be another dictionary. So for example, for David over here, we have another dictionary as the value, and in that dictionary we have phone, email, address, and so on. So does everyone understand why we needed to have a dictionary within a dictionary here? We have basically this dictionary, which is within the bigger dictionary, describes the person David, right? And everything within is describing that key, right? This phone number is corresponding to a phone, which is of David. Then this email is the email of David, right? So David is the common thing. That's why he needed everything else to be in the dictionary. Okay. You can also add new key value pairs in a dictionary. So if you try to do this, favorite color dictionary Jack is equal to pink, and then you try to print out the dictionary again, this will be added. So a new key called Jack, as we see at the end, will be added with the value pink corresponding to it. But because this is unordered, you have to remember it might not be added at the end. In this particular example, it did, but this might not always be the case. So again, we have some methods for this data structure. So the first method we have is get. So this can be used is used as the same as the square brackets we were using earlier to find that thing in the dictionary, right? So instead of using the square brackets, we can use the get functionality, right? But in this, what we have another thing. that is the default value. So if the key is not found, we found an error in the previous method, right? In this, we can denote default value that will be returned in case there is no value corresponding to that index. So, for example, in this, David did indeed have something in the dictionary. So the key value corresponding to it was outputted. But if we go to the next line, Jane does not have a contact in that dictionary we mentioned previously, right? So we have a default value called Jane not in contacts, and that is what will be outputted instead of giving us the error. So this will be more useful if you want to prevent errors. Returns a list of all the keys. So the keys method will return all the keys present in your dictionary, right? So currently there was only David in the dictionary, so it returned David. But it was if there was also more people, it would have returned all those keys. Values. Returns a list of all the values present in your dictionary. So it will return a list of the values as the keys return a list of the keys. So this is rather straightforward. And then the items will return a list of tuples. So this we will see in you can see in chapter 28 of the book that is in your syllabus, and it represents the key value pairs in your dictionary. So if you see over here, contacts underscore dict dot items, it returns a list of items, right? So David and then the value corresponding to it. So this is a tuple which you can read about in chapter 28. So these are the additional resources that you can see, and I'm not going to be clicking on them, but I will be sending out these slides to you so you can always have a look yourself. So we have reached the end of the lecture part. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to start the tutorial on PyCharm about what we learned today. Resume recording. All right. So I have written this little piece of code here. So don't forget this line: from array import star. We always need this to write arrays. So my array equal to array I 1 2 3, right? So we had a question earlier, do we need to specify? Let's find out. So if we don't specify it and just make the list, you think this will still work? We're getting a little yellow highlight. Let's try and run it. Let's see what happens. Okay. So we're getting an error over here. It says array argument 1 must be a Unicode character, not list, right? So this is why we can't do that. It needs to be I, and we write 1 2 3, right? So what will this give us? What answer will this give us? Anyone in chat want to tell me? 0 2 3. Okay, let's see. Anyone else have a guess? What will this code do? We're making an array. Okay, we have an answer 2. Okay, let's see. Let's try to run it. So it is indeed 2. So good work. So the answer is 2, right? Okay, so let's try to write some more code. I'm going to delete that. Now I'm going to append something. Let's see who was paying attention in class. Um, okay. And then if I print, okay, what will happen now? Who wants to tell me? 1, 2, 3, 4. It will add 4 to the list. Okay, let's see. Everyone, I think, thinks 4 will be added to the list, right? Okay. I think that's a very good guess. Let's see what happens. Yes, as we can see, it changed the array and now 4 has been added to the list, right? So let's remove this print statement again, and we're going to move on to the next thing. Sorry. So the next method we were going to talk about is pop, right? Okay, now what will be printed out? Who wants to take a guess? So there will be two print things printed out. I want those things separated by a semicolon in your answer in chat, or anything else works as well. Removes 4 and then 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have one guess. Any other guesses about what will be printed? Okay, I think everyone seems to agree with that answer. Let's try and run it. Okay. Okay, so we have another answer with that says we will print 1, 2, 3, 4 twice. Okay, let's see what happens. So we're printing myArray.pop and then myArray. So first it pops the last element in this array. So right now the array was 1, 2, 3, 4 over here on line 5, right? When it went to line 6, it popped that array. So the last element, which was 4, right? That gets popped. It uh, gets out of the array, and then that will be returned to this print, right? So 4 is printed out here and it is removed from the array. Then when we print the array out again, we see that 4 has been removed. Okay, so does everyone understand how we reached this answer? Okay. Yes, so we have a question in chat. Does the pop function always remove the last key? Yes, so the very last object will always be removed by the pop function and it will be returned. So it is not the key that is being removed, it is the object that is at that key that is being removed. Does that make sense? So the object at the last key will be removed. Or can we remove any object using the pop? So if we want to remove any object, we will use remove, which I will be getting to in a second. My array 2 is equal to 5, let's say. And what will happen now after all of this code? What will be the answer? Any guesses? So we have a guess 1, 2, 5. Any other guesses? Or do you have the same guess? You can have the same guess. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Any other guesses? 1, 2, 5. Okay, so 2, 3 people seem to be thinking 1, 2, 5. Let's see what the answer is. Yeah, so we got 1, 2, 5. So that is the correct answer. Let's see how we got here, right? So my array is, so let me try to use annotations actually. Okay. So at line 2, we create an array, right, with 3 objects in it. 1, 2, and 3. So now after that on we reach line 4, right? We append 4 to this array. Then on line 6, we popped it, right? So what popping does is it removes that element. So we removed it, right? We're done with pop. So after that, we go to my array and the second element. So if you remember, we start with the 0, right? Then 1, and this is 2. So the second element is changed to 5. So this is no longer 3, it is 5, right? So when we print the new array out, or the sorry, when we print the array out, it will now be 1, 2, and 5. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So now let's move on to the next part, which is remove, right? Oh, sorry, insert. We're going to try and insert elements. So let's get rid of all of this. Okay, so when you type this and you see this automatically gives you something over here, right? So self you can ignore, and then the rest of the two means that this can have two values over here, right? So the first thing is the value, and the first thing is the index, which is I, and the second thing is the value, which is V. Can everyone see what I'm talking about? Right? So index, right? I. So I want to insert, let's say, at the second place or at the first place, I want to insert 5, right? Now let's try to print my array. Okay, any guesses for what will happen now? 1, 2, 5. Okay. We have 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay. Any other guesses? 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, let's try to run this code and see what the answer will be. 1523. So it looks like nobody guessed that, right? So let's try to understand what insert is doing, right? Oh, sorry. Okay. So we created an array, right? It has three things in it. One, two, three, right? And we can write the indexes 0, 1, and 2. Now we say insert at the first index. So this is the index and this is the value. Okay. When we're doing insert. So the index is 1. So we want it over here, right? And the value is 5. So what it does is it breaks it at the point where 1 is. It breaks it apart, right? So it will make 1 on one side and it does 2 and 3 on the other side, right? And then at this first place it will put 5, which is the value, right? So now the new indexes are 0, 1, 2, and 3. Does that make sense to everyone? How insert works? Okay, good. I think everyone understands. All right, so next we're going to try remove. All right. Oh my. Okay, who wants to take a guess about what remove will do? What will be printed out? What will happen to the array? Okay, so we have people saying 1, 3, 1, 2. All right, so those are both good guesses, right? So 2 can maybe mean that this value 2, or maybe it means the index 2, right? So how do we find that out, right? So when you're typing remove, right, and when you write this down, it will say something like this. So V always means value. So you can remember it like this. So when you open PyCharm and it says V, when you're typing in the value over here, that will remind you that it means value. So if you type 2, it will remove the value 2 here. If it wants to say key or index, it will either say K or I, right? So V means value. So when we remove this, it will remove 2 from that. So we get 1 and 3, right? And now the last and the most easiest one, I guess, the most easiest method is index. So what will this give us? Everyone should have the correct answer for this, right? What will this give us? We want to get the element at index 2. Okay, so we have someone saying 1, 2. So the simplest way to understand this is it's that this is the same exact thing as writing this. So now can anyone tell me the answer now? 3. We have someone saying 3. So we run this again and we get 1 and 3. Oh, okay. So I may have made a mistake. Index does not, in fact, do the same exact thing. It gives us the value of the index for this particular value, right? So the value 2 is at index 1, correct? So that is why we're getting 1. So that is my bad. I apologize. Index, in fact, searches for the index. So when we do 3 over here, it will return 2 because 3 is at the index 2. And if we do 1, it will return 0 because 1 is at the index 0. Does that make sense? I apologize for the mix up. Okay. So moving on to dictionary now. So all we need to do for dictionary is this. That's it. That's how you start a dictionary. You can also do this. These two lines mean the same exact thing. I prefer doing the first one because this is also the same in many other languages, so you might want to stick with that. Correct. So first we are going to see how a dictionary is defined. So we have key value pairs, right? So let's say what kind of a dictionary do we want to make? Hmm, okay, let's make fruits and um, their colors, for example. Okay, we have apple is red. Oh, these are comma separated. The, sorry. Okay, so apple, then orange. Oh, we have to keep this in quotation marks to make it a string, right? So oranges are orange. Banana is yellow. All right. We have a dictionary right in front of us, right? We're getting a yellow line here. So we can do reformat, and this makes our code just look better. So when you see a line like that in PyCharm, you can click on it or you can leave it like that. It doesn't really matter. What you don't want is the red lines or any highlighting of any sort. Those usually lead to errors. So in my dictionary now, if we print this out, right, this gives us exactly what we had, right? So now if we want to access a particular key, so what do you think this will give us? Any answers in chat? This is my dictionary. Okay, so we have an answer. Let's try to run it. And it does give us red, right? That's what you were looking for. So the next we have methods. We had four methods, right? So the first one is the get method. So, okay, so before we do that, let's try accessing something that we're not allowed to access, right? So we didn't check for papaya, right? So this gives us an error because papaya is not present in the dictionary. So to avoid this, we use the get function, right? So if we do dot get apple, then default value is not available, right? Okay, so what will this give us? Any guesses in chat? We have just 8 minutes, so rapid fire. Whatever you think is the answer, go for it. Red. Okay. So, okay, let's try running it. It is indeed red, right? Because the default value is only displayed if we don't have that value inside, but we already have apple in there. So that will indeed be um, red, right? But if we try to access a value that is not there, no, right? Now it will say not available because papaya is not in there. So it reverts to the default value that we supplied it. So it only goes here if the value is not available. So the next thing we have is dot keys, right? So this will just give us a list of all the keys that are present. So apple, orange, banana, those are the keys, right? And then we can still do the same for values, right? Red, orange, yellow. Then we can also do items, which will give us pretty much everything inside, right? So this gives apple, red, orange, orange, banana, yellow. So tuple is basically like a pair over here. So is everyone clear on all the various methods and items that we discussed? Right, so I'm going to stop recording.